Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 2 of my Directors Ranked series. And in this episode, I will be ranking the films of the director Bong Joon-ho. So Bong Joon-ho is a director who has been around for about 20 years now, maybe more. But in the last few years, he has become quite a popular director, a highly acclaimed director. And that is completely justified because he has got some absolutely brilliant films. Not a massive filmography, I only count 7 films, but pretty much all of them are amazing films, and he is a director who is definitely worth checking out. So yeah, without further ado, I will give you my personal ranking of his films. Now, I'm not going to include any sort of short films or documentaries or episodes of TV that he may have directed. I am just going to give you my ranking of his feature-length films. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So in 7th place, I'm going to go with his feature-length debut film, which is the film Barking Dogs Never Bite, released in 2000. So yeah, this is the film that is about a guy, he's a college lecturer, he lives in a apartment complex and spends a lot of his time working from home. But one day he becomes quite irritated by the sounds of a barking dog that is living nearby to him. And it gets to the point where he just becomes so frustrated by this that he decides to take matters into his own hands, go out and sort this dog out. And yeah, that is basically the plot in a nutshell. It's typical Bong Joon-ho. There's lots of twists and turns in this movie. You think the movie's going to go one way, and then it goes in a completely different direction. And yeah, overall, it's a pretty decent film, decent sort of thriller, a kind of a black comedy vibe to it. Why is it in last place? Well, I think the reason is just because out of all of his films, it just feels the most sort of unpolished. It's his debut film, so it's definitely a bit rough around the edges. I think the story is kind of like, it doesn't quite fit into a feature-length film. It feels like this story would have been better as a shorter film, and it's just kind of stretched to within an inch of its life, and it just doesn't quite work as a film. There are parts where the film kind of drags. It definitely goes on for too long. But overall, it's like, you know, it's not a bad little film. I mean, as I said before, Bong Joon-ho doesn't have any bad films, in my opinion. But this is the one I would just have to rank last, unfortunately. I will say as well that any dog lovers out there, you might want to tread carefully when you watch this film. The dogs in the film, they're not treated badly as such, but there are some scenes in the film that could make, you know, dog lovers a bit uncomfortable. And, you know, the film even has a warning at the beginning to say that no dogs were harmed in the making of this film. So that kind of says it all, really. You know that, you know, this film could be a bit uncomfortable in places with how dogs are treated in it. So that's just one thing that dog lovers might need to keep in mind when they watch this film. But yeah, that's Barking Dogs Never Bite, and yeah, I have to put that one in last place. So in 6th place, I'm going to go with 2009's Mother. So this is the film that's about a young boy. He has some sort of social issues, he has maybe some mental problems, but overall, you know, he's a good lad. You know, he doesn't really get into trouble, but he does have some troublesome friends. But one day, a young girl, her body turns up murdered, and it turns out that this boy was the last person to see her alive. So straight away, he becomes the prime suspect in the police investigation, and eventually he is actually charged with the murder and sent to prison. Now, this young boy has a mother who, typical mother, will do anything for her son, and she basically decides to take matters into her own hands and start her own investigation to find out what actually happened and hopefully to clear her son. Again, this film is very Bong Joon-ho. You think it's going to go one direction, and then all of a sudden it goes in a completely different one, and there are plenty of twists in this film, and yeah, some shocking moments for sure. Why is it only in 6th place? I think the reason is probably because out of all of his films, it's one that I just don't really find myself going back to all that often. It's a really good film. Really solid story, great performances. But I'd say that, again, it's kind of long. It drags a little bit in places. But I think really it's just not as strong as the rest of his films, but it's still a really, really good film. And if you like, crime thrillers, mysteries, films about, people being accused or wrongly accused and trying to clear their name, then I think you'll really enjoy this film. It is a really, really solid film, but it just makes it in 6th place for me. So in 5th place, I'm going to go with 2006's The Host. So this is Bong Joon-ho's answer to monster movies. And yeah, this is a really, really great film. It's about a monster that suddenly emerges from the river, and it causes terror for people in the city. And in particular, one family is severely affected by the attack of this monster, and they have to go out themselves to try and stop it. And yeah, this is a really, really fun film. What I love about this film is that there is essentially no build-up to actually seeing the monster. I think most monster movies, you don't really see the monster for like a good chunk, maybe like 45 minutes to an hour into the film before you actually see the monster. But this film, within the first 5 or 10 minutes, you have seen the monster, and you have seen the monster in full. And what an opening this film has, and it just doesn't let up. The first hour in particular is just so entertaining and so fun. I would say that the last hour of the film does slow down a little bit, and that's why I kind of put it in 5th place. I think the last hour of the film can't quite match the first hour, but it's still a really, really fun movie. It's quite dark in places. It does get a bit more serious in the last hour, but it is such a great film. And if you like your monster movies, then there is no reason why you won't like The Host as well. But for me, it just lands in 5th place. So in 4th place, I'm going to go with 2013's Snowpiercer. So this film is probably the closest that Bong Joon-ho got to making a real sort of Hollywood film. Most of the actors in this film are all English speaking, so it is for the most part an English speaking movie. So for that reason, it's probably his most accessible film. And yeah, this film, basically, it's about the Earth has, it's essentially succumbed to like global warming or sort of an ice age. Most of the population are dead. The remaining population, they all live on this train called the Snowpiercer. And this train basically it's constantly traveling, and it's just going around the Earth. And the train is split by class. So all the rich upper class people all live near the front of the train, and they all live a very lavish, luxurious lifestyle. And then you've got the lower class, the poorer people who all live at the back of the train. And, conditions for them are awful. They're all squashed together. They've got no food, no comforts. They're dressed in rags, essentially. And then one day, these people just decide to stage a revolt, and they basically fight their way to the front of the train. And again, what I love about this film, like The Host, is after maybe about 5 minutes of backstory and exposition, this film just gets going and it doesn't stop. This film moves like a bullet, and it is so entertaining. And again, there are some strange twists that happen in this film that you just do not see coming, and it's just so much fun. It's got a terrific cast, but I will shout out to Tilda Swinton. Her character in this film is just brilliant, and her performance is so manic, so crazy, and she just steals every scene she's in. And yet, this film is just so entertaining. Is it one of like Bong Joon-ho's best from a sophisticated point of view? Well, probably not, but sometimes you just need to watch a film that is just going to entertain you for 2 hours, and this film does that. And I really do love Snowpiercer, and that's why it's in 4th place. So in 3rd place, I'm going to go with 2003's Memories of Murder. So this film is based on a true story about a serial killer that was quite prolific in South Korea, and he killed quite a few women, and the case actually went unsolved for a very long time. And when this film came out, the case was still not actually solved. And yeah, it basically follows the police trying to solve this mystery and trying to solve the murders. And yeah, what a great film this is. It has a lot of similarities to David Fincher's Zodiac film. And obviously that film is about the Zodiac killer who was very prolific in the 1970s in California. And that case to this day still remains unsolved. So like that film, Memories of Murder basically follows the police department. We don't really see much in terms of the actual murders in the film. It's more to do with the police investigation and what they have to do to try and solve it. And it's just a really, really brilliant film. And what I love about this film is that even though it was only Bong Joon-ho's second film, it feels miles better, well, miles ahead of his debut film. This film feels like it was directed by someone who's been directing films for 20 to 30 years. It's just so well done. And you just feel like he's learned so much between this film and his first film. The cinematography is absolutely brilliant. The performances are great. The story is fantastic. And I love the end as well, because at the time, this film was, well, the actual murders were still unsolved. So the film has an ending that is kind of downbeat, but so chilling. And that final shot is just so good. But yeah, I love this film. And if you like your police dramas, your thrillers, crime dramas, murder mystery type films, then I definitely recommend Memories of Murder. It is a fantastic film. And for me, it lands in third place. So in second place, I'm going to go with what is probably Bong Joon-ho's most well-known film, and that is 2019's Parasite. Yeah, this is a film that pretty much took the world by storm when it first came out. I have not heard one person say a bad thing about this movie. It really is that good, and it really does deserve the acclaim it's gotten. This film is basically about a family who live in a poor part of the town. They don't have much. And then one day, the young son from the family is able to get a job working for a rich family in the affluent suburbs. And over time, he's able to get the rest of his family to also get jobs working for this rich family. And then once they're all there, they decide to try and scheme their way into the house and take the house. And this film is classic Bong Joon-ho in that you think it's going to go one direction and then all of a sudden it goes in the complete opposite. The twists and turns in this film are just so crazy and it's just one hell of a ride. I know many people have said this before, but it is best to go into this film with a completely blank canvas and just, you know, not know much about it. That way you will definitely have a much better time with the film. And yeah, it deserves all the praise it gets. It's just so entertaining. It's funny. It's dark. You know, it's got drama. It's got everything, really. I just can't really praise it enough. It's a fantastic film. And if you haven't seen it, but you're thinking about seeing it, then I would just say do not hesitate. Just go and see this film because you are sure to have a great time with it. Right, guys, we're at the #1 spot. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, hang on, he's already ranked Parasite. He's already ranked Memories of Murder. What could possibly be in #1? Well, for me, Bong Joon-ho's best film, the one I enjoyed the most, is 2017's Okja. So this is a film that was released exclusively to Netflix, and I think currently that is the only way to actually watch the film. Now, I went into this film not really expecting much. It didn't really seem like my type of film, but I have to admit, I watched this film and I just loved it. I absolutely adored this film. It's basically about a young girl who meets this creature who goes by the name of Okja, and Okja is sort of like a half pig, half elephant, and Okja sort of becomes this girl's best friend. But then eventually we get this greedy company that decide they want to take Okja for their own devious needs. So they take Okja from this girl and then the girl decides to go and rescue her best friend. Now, I know we've seen this type of plot in many movies before, but for me, this film just kind of had everything. It's just such a fun movie. It's very, very touching in places, and it's just so entertaining. And it has one of the best uses of John Denver's Annie's song I have ever seen in a film. The scene in question is just so funny. Like, I just could not stop laughing when this scene was on. And yeah, it's just a really, really fun film. Is it like Bong Joon-ho's most sophisticated, most intellectual film? Well, no, absolutely not. You know, you'd give that to Parasite, you'd give that to Memories of Murder for sure. But in terms of being fully entertained all the way through, this film did it for me. It really did. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at me right now thinking, how can I put this film above the likes of Parasite and the likes of Memories of Murder? But I just really enjoyed it. I really, really did. And also the film had an effect on me. Like, when it got to the end and I finished the film, I kind of started to question the way I went about eating, you know, in terms of like being a meat eater or being a vegetarian. I started to have those thoughts in my mind. That's how strongly the film affected me. And I think when a film has that kind of effect on you, you know that it's a good film and you know it's done its job. I think for a lot of the time when you watch a film, you just, you know, you sit down, watch it for 2 hours, and then after it's over, you forget about it. But when you have a film that, you know, you watch, you enjoy, but then you're still thinking about it for 2 or 3 hours afterwards, then you know the film has done its job. And this film did it for me. It really did. I just think it's a lot of fun and, you know, really, really touching story. Great performances all round. And this film is kind of half Korean, half English. So I think after Snowpiercer, it's probably Bong Joon-ho's most accessible film. But I think it's very underrated. I really, really do. I know everyone will talk about his other films, but for me, Okja is number one. Well, there you go, guys. That is my ranking of Bong Joon-ho's entire filmography. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you've got any thoughts, comments, or even your own rankings of his films, then I would love to see them. So please leave them below and I will be sure to comment back. But until then, I will hopefully see you all again very soon. So take care, guys, and see you all again very soon.